Let me guess. In order to do basic tasks like eating, cleaning, or sleeping, you gotta have a random person from the internet talk to you about something that doesn't matter at all. Don't worry, me too, I'm not judging. Anyway, here's a bunch of graphic design I've done with some chill jazz to set your scene. Feel free to skip around, and I'll be back to sprinkle some random thoughts throughout the video. Let's start off with one of my favorites, my redesign of Starburst. I don't know what it is about just that clean gradient background, but it looks pretty nice. I do kind of have a vision for this a little bit. Let's get a new font in here, something spacey. Anyway, instead of horizontal text, we're gonna do vertical text. Okay, that looks pretty clean. And hear me out on this. We're gonna add a big star. Wow. Not your traditional looking star, but I think some uniqueness is needed since literally every star is just drawn the same. Okay, this is gonna look a little bit messy for just a second, but just trust the process. Then we're gonna get a big rectangle, something like this. I'm gonna separate this into a S and Starburst. The S, of course, fitting nicely into that big star, and the Starburst will follow along, and we're gonna burst it out like so. That's not the most legible text in the world. It'll be fine, it's fine. There's a specific thing in design called sunburst, which obviously sounds very similar, but it's just this design with the lines going out. So I think we do a similar thing around this star, just getting a nice sort of gradient of colors. I think it's pretty well known that pink is the most popular Starburst flavor. I know they have packages of just pink ones, but I think maybe we just emphasize that a little more in the original. It's gonna bother me if these edges don't line up, actually. And I want the star to stick out a little more compared to the rest of the trail. Maybe a nice drop shadow sort of thing. Ooh, that's kind of fun. Or, better idea, we're gonna make these gradients. I was doing a bit of research and I found out how Starburst got its name. The burst part of it is just because the burst of flavor that comes when you bite into it and stuff. But supposedly the word star was just to draw more interest during the space race in the
1967.
I mean, clearly it worked. These are super popular now. But I don't know, that seems like almost malicious that they just threw in that word with no connection at all. So it's good we're getting some sort of star theming in here. I think that actually looks pretty clean. We definitely have to mess with that text a little though. First, I do have an idea for the S specifically. I want to emphasize that it's part of the star rather than just being an S inside of a star. I'm not gonna lie to you, that is not how I wanted it to look. Then as a nice final touch, we're gonna add just a few more stars in the background here. Of course, having a very similar shape to our original star. If you're relatively new to the channel, you might categorize me as a graphic design YouTuber, but if you've been following me for a long time, you know that that's not really what I do. These videos were supposed to all just be jokes, but now I've locked myself into actually trying to design good stuff. I don't know if that's necessarily a good or bad thing. I feel like I have to take these a lot more seriously, but I like to think I'm still making it kind of funny. Like, should I lean harder into the legit graphic design world, or should I try to make it funnier and bad? Anyway, it doesn't really matter. At the end of the day, I'm just gonna do whatever I want. Can't forget to add some of the subtext. Again, I'll tweak this a little more later. Okay, so the main thing is I'm just gonna add the subtext of the calories and whatever. And sadly, I think we do have to shrink this down a little just to keep the top of the star in the bag even after you rip it off. Maybe I can get some more stars up there real quick. Nice, there we go. Then let's add a little fruit choose text. But the main reason I'm coming back to you as future me is so that we can redesign one of these little wrappers. I can't really find any high quality photos, but as you can imagine, it's just gonna look something like this. Honestly, that looks like a really good app logo if they ever wanted to make like a mobile game or something, I don't know. And let's not forget to get the little text underneath. Cherry chew. And I'm actually gonna have it bend the opposite way to fit with the curve of this star rather than the curve of the drop. Anyway, here's the final versions of both of those. I think that turned out pretty solid, actually. The whole idea of this video was to be something nice and chill you could throw on in the background. But while I was editing this, I became dreadfully aware of my YouTuber voice. I think growing up, I generally had a pretty quiet voice, but then slowly I realized that when I'm talking to more people, I should have a louder voice and project more. And since on YouTube, I'm talking to a lot of people, I should have a really big voice to compensate. That was entirely a subconscious decision, but now looking back on those old videos, I'm like, why am I yelling all the time? So I think I'm recovering. I'm getting better at staying chill. But hopefully me being loud isn't too distracting throughout this little compilation video. Anyway, next we got a design that turned out pretty nice. My version of Michael Jackson's Thriller. Of course, we gotta start this list with the best-selling album of all time. I don't know if that's necessarily true anymore with streaming being the main form of listening now. When I was researching this album and specifically the cover to get some inspiration, I found out that the full version of this album cover is crazy. It looks like a pretty regular photo of Michael just laying down, but there's no way to guess what's on his lap. A freaking tiger cub. Like, are you kidding me? That goes so hard. I can't believe they didn't use one of the variants that has the tiger cub closer to his face. I really liked the suggestion to make this look like a Thriller movie poster. So to get some inspiration, let's go to the Thriller music video. If you haven't seen this, it's pretty fun. I definitely recommend it. It's got a lot of exciting moments, like Michael Jackson turning into a werewolf. But yeah, it turns out that was all just a movie, and then he goes walking home with this girl, and then he actually is a zombie, and then he's actually not a zombie, and then he actually is a werewolf. This shot specifically is pretty solid. Let's just get a screenshot of this. Take him out of the background and definitely brighten him up. Let's get a nice frame going. Then actually, I really like this text that's at the beginning. Get a screenshot of that as well. A couple really iconic posters I've seen are for Halloween and The Thing. I like kind of that simplistic vibe, but at the same time, a lot of these are pretty complicated, so I think we can kind of just go for whatever. Let's get a posterize effect on Michael. That seems fitting. Oh, that looks kind of terrifying, actually. Jeez. Ooh, I kind of like this up close sort of vibe. Maybe we do something like that. Really zoomed in. Maybe we actually make a frame that's rectangle inside of the square. Kind of like the blonde cover from last time. Just a lot of experimenting here, not gonna lie. Movie posters never have just the title. They always have some sort of subtext. So I was trying to figure out what we could put like down here or something. And I was looking at the genres and I came across post-disco. I was a little curious what this meant, but apparently this was a huge deal. In the 70s, disco was just totally running the world. Its popularity could not be stopped, and people were not happy about it. Specifically, rock fans. They were so upset about it that it led to the Disco Demolition Night, which is way more literal than you're thinking. During a baseball game, a severe disco hater, Steve Dahl, organized this event, where he basically told everyone to bring their disco vinyl records, throw them onto the field, and then they just blew them all up. Like an actual explosion. It like actually damaged the baseball field because they did this. And apparently the news covered it enough that people slowly started listening to disco less and less. It worked. Therefore leading to the genre post-disco, which was kind of a response to that to keep some elements but then not be disco. Anyway, that's just one of the elements of this album, but I think the idea of the death of disco is kind of a fun tagline for this album movie poster thing. What if we make Michael red instead of black and white? Something like this. Let's see, I need more. Something's missing. Oh wait, I have a perfect idea. You know how you see all the movie posters like in the hallways of a movie theater? What if we just make it look like that? Let's fit this to the right dimensions. But to make it a little more realistic and aesthetic, I'm just gonna bloom out these lights. This looks really bad right now, just wait. Okay. I don't think that's too bad. I might tweak it a little more later. Guys, it's the next day and I'm realizing this is really not what I was wanting it to be, but a better version of this came to me in a vision, so I'm gonna fulfill that. We're not doing this wall and frame sort of stuff. I think that kind of ruined it, but this is a really solid start. For some reason, that one Grimes album came to mind where it's got like the main photo that's a rectangle and then kind of just a banner on the side with some words, I guess. So let's go for something like that and see what happens. Yeah, I can already tell this is gonna be a lot better. Maybe just a basic track list could work pretty well. The Girl Is Mine. That's very demanding. The whole concept of that song is kind of funny. It's just Michael and Paul arguing about who gets this girl with just like zero consent from her, I guess.
She told me that I'm her forever lover, you know, don't you remember?
Well, after loving me, she said she couldn't love another. You keep dreaming.
Okay, this could be okay. Does Michael have like a logo? I think that maybe just his signature's pretty good. We'll make that white. Maybe just like a bunch of mindless whatever text. Let's go back to the Wikipedia. American singer and songwriter. Okay, I'm feeling a lot better about that. Definitely still not perfect, but that's absolutely an improvement over the old version. And I honestly might prefer it over the original. Kind of just a crazy new vibe. I dig it. Anyway, the next design is basically the definition of trust the process. I get comments saying basically that exact thing all the time. I think my style of designing is kind of just throwing everything in there and then polishing it up at the end, and then just hoping that it works out. I think that's how a lot of design ends up working out, but I think since I'm using Photoshop to compile a bunch of different pictures together a lot of the time, each element can have a pretty different vibe going on until you make it more cohesive, which is especially true for this next one where I made a complicated and simple version of Instagram. Now, honestly, I do think this gradient they got going on is pretty nice, and this is of course a simplified version of their old logo, this camera. To start, I'm gonna do the overcomplicated design. In order to do that, we need to know what kind of camera this is. And the answer to that is kind of complicated. Instagram's very first logo was actually this one, which was a pretty blatant ripoff of the Polaroid One Step, which was a very popular instant camera, giving us the Insta in Instagram. And you can see they kept the rainbow stripe in a few of the different elements, but other parts of it don't quite match up, like this leather texture. And if you ask me, this looks a little closer to a rangefinder style camera, which notably has the leather texture and the viewfinder in the corner. That's just the little piece of glass you look through. But even compared to this, there's some details that aren't quite matching up. Like they kind of swapped the metal texture with the leather. And obviously lots of the details like the dials and the flash are totally missing in the Instagram logo. So with all that in mind, let's try to make one more in this style. We want all those grooves to be nice and big, so you'll be able to see them even from far away. Then we can grab a metal texture to go above. But you know, already looking at that looks really boring. Like I said, I do really like this color palette of the newer versions. We don't have to go that extreme, but let's just pop some color in here. Same with the leather, let's pop some color into that as well. It doesn't look super awesome yet, just wait. I just want to jam everything in here first, and then we can worry about all the lighting and coloring. That being said, I do want to add just a little shadow right here. Just a nice little way to blend those two parts together. You can see the little gap between the pieces on this. I do like that. Let's try to replicate it by just moving this down. And while we're at it, we'll add a little highlight onto our leather here. Now let's try to find a camera that's got a nice lens for us to steal. Shrink that down to size. And it is really hot in here. I need to change my shirt. Okay, this is a decent start, but I kind of want to get all this detail that's around the lens. Maybe just something simple like this will do. Let's cut it out real quick. We'll get our other lens on top, and let's just fit them together. Then actually, let's just take the viewfinder from that camera as well. I'll cut that out nicer in a second, don't worry. Then honestly, let's just keep rolling with this camera. Let's get all these little buttons and screws and flash and everything. Try to line things up a little nicely. And we gotta pay respects to the old versions. Let's keep that rainbow stripe going. Get some rectangles in here, and we'll blend them based off color. Boom, bop, bam, pow. And actually, I think it'll work better if we change this red back to gray. And that texture looks a little too detailed. Maybe we'll zoom it back out a little. Let's add the nice shadow back in there. And those rectangles aren't popping out quite as much as I wanted to. Let's try the other blend modes. That's fine. Let's try to make these little elements blend in a little better. My idea for that is we'll cut out specifically these parts. What we can do is just add a bevel and emboss filter, make it nice and deep. We want it to be going inwards. Do that on the viewfinder as well. Maybe set it in a little deeper. That's trippy. That actually works really well. Now this is kind of hard to implement, but I think this curve right here showing this dial is really nice. And that'd be a super good addition to our actual logo. So we'll put that right on top like so. And now that we kind of got that shape in mind, let's try to copy it with our metal texture. Cut it out just like this. And we can put that all the way to the back. Very cool. I'm not in love with the purpleness of the leather. Let's try shifting that over to more of a pink. I kind of like this little floating screw here. Let's just get that in here. Now we definitely need to do some more lighting work. Let's do a little shadow from the lens like the old version. That actually works pretty well. Back on the metal, let's do the top rim here. And let's just apply some nice lighting to the entire thing. Starting with a nice shadow. And I know I'm all over the place here, but let's actually cut out around this lens a little bit. Just a nice little cutout to help the lens stand out. Oh, I almost forgot. We really got to add this Insta text back in here. I almost imagine that as like a little patch. I don't know if that physically makes sense with how small it is, but let's just try it out. Shrink that down nice and small. And let's take that word out. We'll get our own text in here. Try to match that as much as possible. Anyway, I'll try to clean this up a little more later and maybe tweak the colors. But no matter what you think about it, that is definitely more overcomplicated. So I call that a success. And of course, now we gotta make it oversimplified. And if you ask me, this just comes down to one main change. You can see they simplified this logo into this one, but it's kind of weird that they shrunk the app icon into itself. Like, that was kind of totally unnecessary. So instead, we'll just keep these two little circles, and we'll of course keep the gradient background. Gotta be sure it's just as vibrant. Two circles, one smaller. This one is not filled in, but it has a stroke. I don't know, man. I don't know what else you can ask for, honestly. That's just about the only way to oversimplify that logo. That's already so simple. I love how it doesn't even kind of represent a camera anymore. That is kind of sick. I think doing this has already made me appreciate this style and the more modern style even more. Like, something about this one seems so nice and clickable. Like, I almost want to eat it. Let me know if your team's simple or complicated on this one. I'm honestly pretty split. If you've been around my channel for a while, you should know about the globe. Let me go grab it, actually. At the end of each of my design videos, I just tape my favorite one I did for the day onto here. I started it at the same time as my Fix the World series, just because I thought it was a fun way to tie the episodes together a little bit, you know? But I realized it kind of just hasn't gone anywhere, like this kind of just sits there. So I thought it would be fun for this video to showcase all the ones that made it on here, kind of like a little Hall of Fame. I included a few runner-ups too, but next is one of my favorite snack redesigns, Pop-Tarts. I don't know if these count as a snack to everyone, but at least to me, they definitely are. Like, these do not fill me up in the slightest. I'm realizing this is very similar to the Cheez-It one we just did, but that's not gonna stop me from saying that this looks boring. Like, I don't know, it just doesn't pop like it should. So in order to emphasize that, I wanna get some like nice motion lines where you can feel the motion just going from the bottom corner to the top. And with that, we'll tilt the Pop-Tart, something like that. Maybe we get a little bite out of it, get a new font, of course, make it nice and poppy. Then maybe we can have like a little badge saying that it's strawberry or whatever. Now, the problem with this is it might be kind of hard to find a Pop-Tart with that exact posing. We're just not even getting anything close. Actually, that's kind of close. But that bite's too big and uneven. It's got to be super crisp. You can't look at it and think it's kind of gross. It's got to just be a nice, clean bite. So with that information, I'm going to go take my own picture of a Pop-Tart. With these, I absolutely do not have like a studio lighting setup, so this might be kind of tough. And there we go. Now, I don't know what the ideal Pop-Tart looks like. I feel like they don't usually have the frosting going all the way to the edge like that, but I'm just gonna take a picture anyway. So it's time to take the perfect bite out of this. I haven't had a Pop-Tart in a hot minute. Wow. It's not like that good, but just interesting. Cool. Yeah, let's take a picture. Let's just take a little look at these and yep, I think that's it. That's the money shot. Do a tiny bit of tweaking, get the color balance right and the saturation and stuff. We want it to just look as appealing as possible while also still being accurate to how it actually looks in real life. And we'll just put that in the corner so you can't see my hand. Yes, perfect. That looks way more realistic than this, which is probably computer generated, let's be real. Anyway, now let's find some fonts. Did we already use Marvin Round? It might be the one for the job. I do like how the letters are kind of overlapping like that, so I might actually have to go one letter at a time. Let's just get a good stroke on each of these. Of course, being more on the blue side rather than red. I think it's fun to kind of alternate these letters like up and down so that they kind of fit together in a fun way. I've never just jumbled letters together like this. Okay, that looks kind of fun. Let me get rid of that sketch we had. That is making things so cluttered. I also never really noticed that circle right there. I feel like it really throws off the balance of that logo. I guess they don't want it to look like a period. That's why they didn't put it down here. But maybe if it's just right here, like that does not look like a period for sure. Maybe it's kind of like the pop is behind and bigger than the tarts. So these goes a little smaller. Maybe we bring some of the letters up just a tiny bit. Yeah. Again, I think it's important to close the gaps They didn't close these shadow gaps in the original logo, but I think since they're so close to the edges here, we gotta do it. Including these gaps just between the letters. I think it'll look a little cleaner without them. I'm spending a lot of time just tweaking the very individual sizes of these strokes here. I just don't want the letters to intercept each other too bad, while also being very clear what they're saying. Pop Tarts, Pop Tarts. Yes, nice. Okay, I really actually do dig that logo. Now let's get some global effects on the whole thing. Stuff like that bevel and emboss. Just a little bit of a way for it to literally pop out. Oh, you know what I'm thinking of? Those like anime speed lines. Yeah, that kind of looks fun. Make sure it's kind of all coming from the correct spot. And we'll change the blend mode to something like lighten or screen. Yeah, I think those are a little intense. I'm gonna tone them down just a little bit. I'll even give our little text block a tiny bit of a real shadow, just to make sure it stands out even from those lines. We'll get some lines doing this sort of thing, almost like emphasizing the bite. And right here is where we're gonna say the strawberry thing. Very similar to what we did with the Cheez-Its, but just like a little badge. We'll make that match the red from over here, make it nice and big, almost matching the curve of the bite. And inside there, we'll put a little picture of a strawberry. Give it a little shadow so that it stands out from the red background. Shrink it just like this, so it's kind of in the middle. And right here, we'll just get some text, give that a nice warp to fit the circle, maybe mess with the font again, something a little more plain. And finally, I'll put a little shadow just so that an actual Pop-Tart can stand out as well. Yeah, nice. Pop-Tarts, that goes hard. I didn't even save once. That's crazy. Now, I mentioned in the Starburst section that I am by no means a professional designer. I've done it as a hobby for a while, and then when I started doing it on YouTube, you guys kind of just blew it up, so I kept going with it. And because of that, I've been getting more and more practice, therefore improving. But some of my favorites have been more of the goofy ones. And next, we've got some pretty good examples of that with Captain Crunch and Red Bull. He was a wonderful 2D mascot, but they had to make him 3D like everything else. It's whatever. I'm not mad. It's fine. But a couple of you guys suggested having him be a captain of a ship with like a milk ocean sort of thing. Good idea. Let's do it. This is where I'm gonna kind of start to stretch our one rule of being realistic. Realistic as in they're gonna use it, because I'm gonna make the box really realistic, which they wouldn't do because that's too realistic to be realistic. Does that make sense? Oh, that is perfect. We don't want that blue in there, but we will make the background blue, I think. Pirate ship. I have a very specific vision in mind. Hopefully I can match it. You might know that Cap'n Crunch is actually Quaker Oats brand instead of Kellogg's or General Mills. Those are the two main competitors. I guess Post is in there as well. Or maybe it's Pepsi? What? Oh yeah, it is Quaker, which is owned by Pepsi. That makes me feel a little weirder about it all. But you do you, Cap'n. I'm using like the hairbrush tool to get all these strings in here. I don't know if it's working super well though. Okay, you know what? This will be okay. Ship in the milk. We're gonna flip this around, go smaller. Then we need an old captain. Ooh, like this guy, yeah. Remove the background. We gotta give him the iconic captain hat. Then I'm gonna actually tweak it so that it has the C on there and it's blue. Just something like that. We're also going to darken this spot where it's got the natural shadow, you know. Extend it kind of like this. And we gotta warp it a little. What we're doing is we're gonna fade him in the distance. I kind of wanted the background to be more of a rustic feel, you know? I need some nice texture, like map texture. This is gonna be awesome. Cap'n needs to be blended in a different way. You gotta make these blend in kind of the same as well then. That way you can't pay attention too much to the details of the ship. We can get away with it being a little sloppy. We gotta move everything down so we have a room for the title. The title. It's not a movie. Maybe it should be a movie. Cap'n Crunch? I'd watch it. Let's get some nice like piratey text. Maybe we keep the blue from the original packaging. I realized I don't even have the cereal in this at all. You know, maybe that's a good change of pace though. Having the cereal on the box, overrated. You should be able to look at this and know what you're getting into. I'll mess with it a little more later, but if you ask me, that's pretty dang solid. And for number 5, we've got the famous Red Bull. I believe this is the most popular energy drink in the world. You see ads for this all over the place, and they got like stunt guys doing flips and anything, honestly. You can tell they take a lot of care into their advertising and branding. And overall, yeah, their cans look pretty clean. But what I'm thinking is at this point, they really don't need to have their name anywhere. Like, I think it's very intentional that if you see this from very far away, you know it's a Red Bull just based off those colors. I think we just do that design, and that's kind of it. But you know what? One of you guys had a suggestion that's kind of getting to me now. What if instead of the slogan being Red Bull gives you wings, we have the slogan be Wings gives you wings? Like, let's rebrand the whole thing to be called Wings with 3 eyes, and that's the name of the drink. Okay, I'm changing my mind on this whole thing. I don't like those shapes, except for this circle. I don't know, it kind of looks cool with the gray sort of thing. Okay, hold on. This is giving off a very specific vibe, and I kind of like it. Like, I think we just keep the papyrus. It's kind of funny. I want another ring of wings, 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 wings. This is incredible. You know, if this had like a really sweet font, it could be really cool. But this is just giving off a certain vibe that I really dig. So we're keeping it. You've probably noticed that a lot of these redesigns are based off food packaging, and that kind of just happened naturally. Since food is literally eaten by everybody, the logos and designs of food products have become super recognizable. So when I'm planning these design videos, I usually redesign the most iconic things I can think of, and that just leads to some sort of food product like over half the time. I do make sure to shake things up a little though, and next I've got a couple country flags that do just that. We've got Mexico. This is a great example of a flag being a little more complicated, but the design is so small that it kind of just blurs together into a weird mess, and you can't just get rid of it or it turns into Italy. But if you zoom in and actually take a closer look, this design is actually so sick. The design is just a little too small, so I'm gonna bump it down to A, but it's definitely better than this one. Let's put that to B. Shout out to my Mexican subscribers. Now this picture is depicting the legend of
Tenochtitlan,
which was the capital of the Aztec Empire / early Mexico. The story goes that the early Mexica people were told by their god to build a city once they could find a spot where an eagle was standing on a cactus devouring a snake on an island in the middle of a lake. The imagery of that is kind of sick, and I understand completely why they would want to put that on their flag. So you can guess where this is gonna go, but essentially I just want this picture to be way more of a focal point. Now I'm actually gonna take out this little string of leaves. I was thinking about putting this guy all the way to the left and then having those leaves on the right side of him, but I think we just keep things nice and simple. Let's get a circle around this whole picture, and to each side we'll just do the original colors. Now while I do like this design a bit, it doesn't look super flag-like even compared to my original UK one. So I'm thinking we actually trace over each one of these main shapes and turn them into solid colors. Again, my original idea was to be a bit more complicated and redesign this whole thing, but due to circumstances, we're just gonna work with what we got. Now, this whole idea of fixing flags is definitely not original. This has most famously been done by Jack's Films, but unlike his video, all of these are gonna be completely serious with no jokes. Oh no, there's such an easier way to do this. Big rough outline like so, except for where it intercepts, like right here. Then we can zoom back out, keep going with the rough outline. Just like that, we right click, make selection. Then we can erase everything else in the picture. Actually, we want to get the island. Let me do that real quick. And we can brush away the rest. Now we can add a color overlay. We'll make it the same red. Then on a layer below it, we can add another color overlay and make that one green. The details on the snake look like a little too much. I'm gonna get rid of those. I'm recording sitting down today, which isn't normal. Let me know if you have an opinion on that, I guess. Then yeah, I think we get rid of that water design, whatever it was, just to make it a little cleaner. We'll just make the cactus kind of go into the bottom. I think that is a little more clean. It's just kind of goofy with the stem of the cactus. The third option, which would be even more controversial, is just taking out the cactus altogether. You know, I have a compromise. Let's just get a smaller looking cactus right on the bottom, just a little thing for him to grab onto. Let's make sure it fits within the circle. Yeah, okay. I think that looks pretty solid. In a way, it's more and less complicated to the original. There you go, New Mexico flag, not New Mexico. Updated Mexico flag, obviously S tier. Now let's go on down under to New Zealand. Not gonna lie, this flag is offensively bad. Probably the worst trend in flags is when the British just took over everything and kept putting the Union Jack in the corner. Shout out to my New Zealander subscribers, but this does not look pretty, I'm sorry. Still looks better than Italy though, E tier. No, apparently there was a vote as late as 2015 held to determine the nation's flag. This one obviously won, but some of the candidates were pretty solid. I'm liking all these leaf designs, but this one's kind of crazy too. Anyway, all of these are okay, but one of them stood out. One that was by far the most unique and different and creative. Of course, I'm talking about the laser kiwi flag. This was an actual design submitted by a former political party candidate, Lucy Gray, in Microsoft Paint. Had this won, it would have easily been the best country flag, but apparently it wasn't serious enough, whatever. Anyway, obviously in this modern era, the internet has loved this design. So we'll start with this as the base. We'll keep running with it. Let's see what happens. The easiest addition is probably just an explosion. I'm thinking the kiwi should also be realistic. This flag was designed to represent the deadly animals in New Zealand, which there definitely are a few of. Lucy Gray decided to design this when she saw the first row of candidates for the flag. They were uninspiring. They had no meaning behind them, unlike her design she came to make with a laser kiwi. Like, come on, it's so sick. I mean, to take inspiration from our Greenland flag, I think we just need some sweet looking text that says New Zealand. I might go with papyrus, not gonna lie. That would just be so crazy as a real flag. That's gotta go at the top. Yeah, you know, I think that'll do. New Zealand, there you go. I really like throwing random info into my videos. Obviously, the main point of these videos is to make cool designs, but pretty often, if you have more context about what it is you're designing with history or just random fun facts, you end up getting more interesting results. And I think I just like learning stuff in general, and this gives me an excuse to do some of that. And hopefully you guys like hearing it too. Anyway, here's a bunch of emoji I made, along with fun facts about the Mandela effect. So many of you asked for the robber emoji. Apparently there's this thing where so many people thought that there was already a robber emoji and they remember using it, but it actually never existed at all. This is a classic example of the Mandela effect, which basically refers to multiple people having a false memory about one specific thing. Some more examples are Curious George having a tail or the Monopoly guy having a monocle. And the most famous one, at least when I was growing up, was the Fruit of the Loom logo having a cornucopia in it. I know multiple people that say they learned the word cornucopia from this logo, but it was actually never in it at all, supposedly. Lots of people use these as an example that we're in an alternate timeline or universe or something. Whatever it is, it's kind of crazy, and let's get it resolved. So the robber emoji has been illustrated multiple times by people describing what it is, but most of these drawings are pretty bad, so I'm gonna remake it in the actual emoji style. So let's find something that's relatively close. The person tipping hand and this frowning one look kind of similar. So I think we just put this one's face on here real quick. Like so. Nice. That actually looks really good. Okay, now let's get the striped shirt going. Maybe we'll make the original shirt a little brighter too. None of them have a beanie, it looks like. Let's just make our own. We'll give it some nice texture with a lighter gray. Maybe some of this. Sure. I kind of want to give it like a nice gradient to fit with the rest of this. Lower the opacity. And that looks pretty good, I'll be honest. And let's get the mask on as well. And we gotta fill that in, except for on the eyes, of course. Let's give that the gradient as well. Maybe tone it down a little bit. I think that looks pretty dang solid. So now we need the key part, the money bag over the shoulder. Now there is a money bag emoji, but as you can tell, the angle's a little off. So let's just do what we can. So let's warp it kind of just like this, I'm thinking. But to get the perspective right, we need some of it behind and some of it in front of the person. We'll simply take it away. Compared to the original, I think that's a pretty good step up. Next, I know we already have all these sleepy emojis, but I need one that's just desperately tired. Not sleeping yet, just tired and awake. We'll start here, but I do want some regular eyes. And let's take the mouth off this one. Then we gotta just get the shadows under the eyes. Maybe we do want a little bit of the white around the eyes too, but like not as much as normal, you know? Just enough to make it weird. Yeah. Oh, this is so sad. Maybe we'll use the eyes from this one almost as like crease marks for the eyes. There we go. That's pretty good. That's awesome. We have a suggestion to make the raised eyebrow emoji better. And I totally agree. This guy's just like a little bit suspicious. Like, but especially with the rise of so many sus memes. Oh, I don't want to say that. I feel like this just doesn't convey enough emotion as it should. So my idea is I want one that's just way more zoomed in a way kind of playing with the perspective, so it's more like a fisheye sort of effect. So imagine like big eyeball, smaller eyeball, something like that. And we could actually kind of do this in two different versions. One that's just like this and one with the actual eyebrows, because that was kind of the whole point. Yeah, that's pretty awesome. In a way, we messed with different perspective in the past episode with the side eye emoji. I mean, the actual camera placement didn't change, but at least the emoji angle did, which is essentially the same thing. I'm trying to figure out the best way to angle these. Like, we still want them to be a realistic size relative to the other emoji. Let me get a mouth in here. That might help a little bit. Actually, that doesn't look too bad. It looks a lot cleaner now that I have all the elements in there at least. It's obviously got to stand out being just as big as the letters, essentially. So let's reposition stuff accordingly. I feel like this pupil isn't far over enough. Maybe we just grab that and scoot it just barely. Okay, I think we're running into another problem though. You can see since we scaled up the eye so big, it's looking pretty bad quality, especially along the edges here. I think there's a filter I can do for that. Yeah, that's pretty good. I might fix it up a little more later. We'll see. But anyway, let's move on to the eyebrow version. So let's take some inspiration from our original eyebrows. We'll go up and down. Make sure to make it thicker as it gets to the middle. Round off our little corner here. Let's mess with the scale a little bit. Maybe warp it a tiny bit to fit just that tiny bit better. And let's draw the other one. Same deal, just a little smaller because it's obviously farther away. Yeah, okay. Now let's just tweak the lighting a little bit, and I think that's pretty good. We'll just get a tiny little highlight almost outlining it. But even with something as subtle as that, I think that helps it stand out just that little bit more. I'd say those are two pretty essential additions to our phones. I expect them in the next update, Apple. Next up is one I thought of myself. I want a good emoji for like a cringing, like almost wincing sort of emotion. Like, you know? So this might take some elements of these guys where it's kind of like the side view. And then getting the teeth, the eyebrows, and the eyes, I think, I don't know. We'll see. I don't know if any of them have the teeth I'm wanting specifically. The grimacing face is the closest, I'd say. So this is a good start, but I want to warp it. You know, just something like that. I'll blend this better in a sec, don't worry. Gotta get that perspective going. And I actually want to take some elements from this guy's eyes. Okay, this is already pretty close. Take away the top lines of these. Just want the eyebrows. Like this, you know? I feel like this sort of emotion is like pretty common. I don't know. Like, I'm kind of surprised some of these like aren't really a thing yet, especially as I keep going. Okay, that looks pretty good. I started this whole series and globe thing almost 1.5 years ago, which is crazy to think about. But I think it's fun to see my hair growing out between each of these videos. I only cut my hair once in that whole period of time, and it was just a trim up between these two videos. This is the first time I've actually tried to grow out my hair, and so I kind of just let it go and didn't do anything to it. So right around here, it had some pretty solid length, but the shape was just bad. So I got it trimmed up, made it look cleaner, and man, it looks a lot better. Anyway, here's some more food-related designs. Let's start with Froot Loops. These are obviously one of the all-time classic cereals. They've gone through plenty of box designs, but looks like this is the most recent that they're selling in stores now. Honestly, not too bad. It's nice and bold. It's showing off the mascot pretty good and the cereal. But there's one thing it's totally lacking: a representation of the actual flavors that are in the cereal. It says natural fruit flavors, but what are the fruit? Like, really, what is it? Red, orange, yellow, green, blue, purple. Yeah, that's very descriptive. Blue, my favorite flavor. It seems like no matter what the color is, they're all having these same flavors of orange, lemon, lime, apple, cherry, raspberry, blueberry. So let's get some photos of all of those. Now, when I was thinking about this whole idea, I didn't totally know what to do for Froot Loops. I ended up bouncing through a bunch of different ideas. You know, like having Toucan Sam on the beach with all the fruit, or just having like a huge field of Froot Loops that Toucan Sam is sitting in, like Mr. Beast filled up his backyard with it. I was also considering some sort of DJ theme. If you didn't know, one of the biggest music making programs is called Fruity Loops. So I thought it would be kind of fun to have Toucan Sam just like raving it up, making a turntable out of the cereal, you know. But I got an idea that takes itself a little more seriously. Make these all a little smaller, and let's get all of these fruits the same size. I realized it's kind of bothering me that this has the leaf on it though. We'll get this guy instead. And we'll line them all up. Now, what is the main feature of Froot Loops? They're loops. So we're just gonna take a hole straight out of each one of these. There we go. And let's get some actual Froot Loops in there. Cut each one out. You know, when I was starting to research for this video, I came across something really sad. It was an eBay listing for a gray Froot Loop, which obviously isn't supposed to be one of the main colors, so they were deeming it as rare. But my problem with it is that it cost $400 for a single Froot Loop. I don't care what shape it is or what color it is. One Froot Loop is not worth $400. Not even mint condition. It's totally used. They're actively holding it in their hand in the photo. It's craziness. Anyway, we're just making another row of these. I'm gonna leave all that there for now. Real quick, I wanna just get the text in here. I do like that font a lot, but I wanna just get something even more round. Ooh, I kinda like this actually. That's nice and joyous. I'm actually gonna make some rows that are mixes of the loops and the fruit real quick. But you know what? That wasn't even the worst of it. When I clicked on the listing, someone had it in their cart. In the moment, someone is trying to buy a gray Froot Loop for $400. What have we come to? To deserve that price tag, they gotta ship it in the highest quality bulletproof briefcase or something, along with $300. Like, come on. I've seen other listings like this before, like weirdly shaped chicken nuggets or Cheetos, but like, come on, what are you gonna do with it? What? I just don't get it. There's something I'm missing out on, clearly. And I'm a little lazy, so I'm gonna copy and paste the rows I already did. Okay, now we got a bunch of fruits, but we're gonna replace these top ones with our logo here. That's not too bad, but we want the logo to stand out a little more. I'm thinking for all the other fruit and all the other loops, we mess with the colors a little bit. Let's see. Black and white looks kind of cool, but that's a little too bland. Whoa, that's crazy. Or maybe we just turn down the opacity. That doesn't look bad. The Kellogg's could just replace these three. Then I feel like it's kind of sad not having Toucan Sam in there. Toucan Sam. And while I do like the look of a lot of these, I don't know if any of them really fit with our design here. So let's get the pen tool out. I kind of want to follow the roundness and the grid of this design. We'll get the legs like kind of in between the lines. That'd be cool. Okay, I think we're gonna do old Toucan Sam. My bird drawing skills have failed me yet again.
I do not know how to draw a bird.
Ooh, I kind of like this guy. We're just gonna put him right in the middle and try to make him take up the exact right amount of space. So we're gonna move different parts of him around, especially those legs. I had my doubts, and I'm sure you did as well. But hypothetically, this really will work. Maybe he's like poking out of the side. I think that's kind of cute. Something kind of like this will make his legs a little longer. Let me get rid of these adjacent fruits. Okay, this is a good start. I'm spending a little too much time on this, so with the power of future me doing the work, here's the final result. Ooh, yeah. I think that turned out pretty cool. Of course, we're gonna do the cheddar and sour cream ruffles because they're the best ones, and it's not even close. This is a pretty simple idea, but we're gonna base our design around a dog. Of course, barking or saying ruff, you know, ruffles. So it would be a lot easier if I used a real picture of a dog, but I got a vision for this design and it requires me to draw something out, so let's just try it. I'm not sure the best way to do this. No, come on. I think we get inspired by a really small dog. Like it's a small dog, but it's barking real big. Maybe we can get some sort of motto going with that. We gotta get some teeth in there for sure. I like where that's going, but I want to tweak it a little bit. I want the head to be even bigger, barking even harder. Almost like a 0.5 fisheye sort of view. Something like this. Trying to visualize it. Something I might want to try with a lot of these is switch up the actual logo. We'll test it with the old one and see if we can get a new font or something. It might be look cooler. Jeez Louise. Okay. Maybe we can kind of do some of the same colors. Ooh, yeah, that's a nice blue. A nice touch on the old packaging is those ridges within the colors. So let's definitely keep that up like this. It's an essential point to add the chips onto the bag itself. I want to make it more central. I just want to keep this dog. Let's get the text in there real quick. It looks like the new logo is just a cleaner version of the old one. I dig that. That's not bad. Okay, I just really want to have this dog in here, but it's looking so much nicer if I just don't have the dog in here. Maybe the dog, okay. Hear me out. Dog back over here. Something I was thinking about is it's kind of really cool that like the main problem with these chips is the packaging, because that means they're doing a pretty good job at like making nice snacks, you know? You cannot deny that these are just so yummy. Very small improvements going on right now. I gotta color him. That might be part of my issue, I think. Get his little feet in there. I think I'm overcomplicating this. It already looks pretty solid. I just gotta tweak it, give it the final tweaks. Cheddar and sour, okay, hold on. Now you might be wondering why I didn't just put the cheddar and sour cream at the bottom, and I have a very good reason. As you can see, the old Ruffles had a motto, Ruffles have ridges. While that's great and all, I think we gotta get something new to fit with our dog. He's just too awesome. What should the new motto be? Bark, little ridges, big bark. That's so cheesy. That's sick. Bend that to fit with this ruffle specifically. Well, yeah, we'll be done with that one. That took me way too long. It is 5:45 p.m. Holy cow. I genuinely spent way too long on that, and I'm ready for the next one. If you ask just about anyone, they'll say Lay's are like the king of all chips. Even if they're not your favorite, it's just like they are the default because they're just like classic and good, nice. But to emphasize that they are the peak in that aspect, we gotta make it more artistic and like museum worthy, let's say. A lot of you were saying to do something with laying down, which makes sense, but this guy had a really good idea, okay? Implementing one of the most iconic paintings of all time, the creation of Adam. This is gonna be wild. But as you can see, this picture is obviously very horizontal, so let's make the bag horizontal. Hasn't really been done before, and I don't know why. Maybe it's less durable or something, but I think it's a good idea. Now this fits on very nicely, and while that already looks great, we gotta maintain that nice gold packaging from before. Oh, this is gonna be beautiful. Gotta respectfully take God out of the picture. Bam. We'll give it a nice painterly background. Let's get that Lay's logo. Is there an updated version? Kinda, yeah. This isn't bad. Oh, that actually looks kinda sick, I'll be real. I think it's gotta have the red in it though. Yeah. Yeah. That's sick. Posting videos is such an interesting thing because your whole job is just figuring out what YouTube likes. I'll post videos that I'm super proud of that I put a ton of work into, and they'll get way less views compared to some that I spent a third of the time on. That's not gonna stop me from making what I want. I've got a lot of fun stuff planned, but for me, the design videos are still fun and take way less time to make, and then they get a ton of views, so might as well do more of those while I plan my bigger projects. But even some of those flop for various reasons, and coming up are a few designs that got a little less love from the algorithm. The most iconic album cover ever, The Dark Side of the Moon, Pink Floyd. This is a progressive and psychedelic rock concept album with really deep and meaningful ideas behind each and every song and lyric, which is like the most important thing to have in your music other than the actual sounds happening. And it's a nice bonus that they had a cool cover too, because my goodness, I think this is one of the only albums ever to have its cover exceed the actual album in popularity. You see this cover everywhere. It's one of those designs that basically everyone recognizes. It's very simple and clean, but it's not really elaborating on any of the feelings we're getting as we're listening. So instead, I think we should go through each song of the album and add an aspect from each one to the actual cover. Obviously, we gotta start with The Dark Side of the Moon, like the title suggests, which I'm assuming is this side. Goodbye. First song is Speak to Me. Let's just make the moon have a big old mouth. Yeah, I like this one. Next is Breathe in the Air. There's usually not air in space, but maybe we can add some air. Next we got On the Run, which makes me think of some sort of crime or heist or something. So let's get some sort of heist situation going. There we go, very good. Running on the moon. Then we got The Great Gig in the Sky. I mean, the moon is kind of already in the sky, right? So let's just get a gig going on top of it. Something like that will do, right? Ooh, I like how that looks. Let's get that behind the moon, and then the actual stage can be on the top there. Next, we got money, which we already handled, actually. Then we got us and them. That's reminding me of the heist situation we got going. Let's just get the guy that's actually chasing him on the other side of the moon. Right down here. Any color you like. I think for that, we just keep this original rainbow on the side and the line. Then for brain damage, that reminds me of something. Man, moon, film, face. Yeah, A Trip to the Moon. This is a super old movie that had just some awesome visual effects for the time. I mean, even now it does look pretty cool. But yeah, let's just use this rocket ship to be sticking in the moon like that. And the last song on the album is Eclipse, which I think is pretty easy to implement. An eclipse is obviously when the moon is covering up the sun. So let's just get the sun behind the moon. Go like this. That's actually so cool. You can't tell me that wouldn't be a sick album cover, whether it's for Pink Floyd or anything else. Next up, we got the first of two seriously iconic hip-hop albums, starting with IGOR. This is, of course, the 5th album by Tyler, the Creator. The name Igor usually refers to Frankenstein's assistant. Igor has been represented in all sorts of media and movies, including this guy, which I think looks kind of sick. So to understand the lore a little better, I decided to watch the Igor movie on 20 times speed. And I didn't get it. It was a little too fast. But essentially what I picked up is his idea of Igor is not being able to handle being alone and all of the negative emotions and frustrations that come with that. Apparently the song New Magic Wand is in reference to the Photoshop tool Magic Wand, and supposedly that's why they cut him out with all these angles. But as a certified Photoshop expert, I'm telling you that's not how the Magic Wand works. If I wanted to go for that, I need the polygonal lasso tool, which I guess that just doesn't roll off the tongue the same. I mean, don't get me wrong, that can be a cool aesthetic, but it's just wrong. So let's absolutely be sure to use the real Magic Wand. I think we can get some pretty unique results with it. I think these clumps that it makes are kind of cool. Let's just make a bunch of those. And maybe we just do some cool, like, color shifting. Oh yeah, this could look kind of crazy. Honestly, just kind of going with the flow on this. I kind of want to get those super white eyes like in the original cover. Let's make sure we get it in the frame. I like this little text logo. Let's do something like that. That's kind of cool. This is giving off very different vibes to the original and what it actually sounds like, but I think that's kind of cool. I can totally see that passing as an album cover. We got a Pickle Pokemon, fittingly. I think I have a kind of fun idea for this. First, we grab, of course, a pickle. Then I kind of want to make a dog. Just hear me out for a sec. I mean, use your imagination. He's obviously going to be in a more consistent art style than like 100% realistic and Microsoft Paint drawings. Pickles, where do they come from? Some people say cucumbers, some people say vinegar, some people think they're their own thing, but in reality, we all know they come from jars. So let's get a jar in here. So this jar is kind of like his home. It's almost like a hermit crab situation. But where do you keep the pickle jar? The fridge, obviously. And the fridge is cold. So imagine this jar is like made out of ice. I kind of want to get some liquid. Whoa, that's cool. Okay, so typing is really easy for this, I think. We go grass, because pickles. And while we could go poison with that whack-looking pickle juice, I think we go ice based off the coldness of the fridge and the jar and everything. I better see some fan art of these guys. They're too perfect. I feel like I gotta give him little pickle legs. Yes. Okay, what's he called? Dog Pickle. Pickle Dog. A pun with pickle and dog. Wait. Puda. That's a really goofy name. Banger after banger today. Look at that, man. If you haven't noticed by now, I'm posting this on April Fools. A while ago, I was talking to someone that was saying this is one of the most fun days to post because you can do whatever you want and people are still gonna watch it. And I know this isn't really a funny video like most of the other ones probably are, but I had this idea for a while of doing a compilation sort of thing, and I thought this would be the perfect day to test it out. And a few days ago, I refined the whole idea to be based on having this in the background or while you're sleeping or something like that. I thought it was a funny enough idea for April Fools, but at the same time, it could be something that you guys actually like. So if you do like it and it does well, I've got some pretty fun ideas for it, but we'll get to those later. For now, here's some more snack designs. Let's start with Kit Kats. Kit Kats have become one of the most popular candy bars in the world. In the US, they're mainly just known for the default milk chocolate, so we're gonna design that one today. But they have a huge variety of flavors in different countries that helps keep them relevant. Anyway, you can probably guess the main suggestion for this one. We gotta add a cat onto the Kit Kat. We'll definitely get to that, but first I have a couple ideas I want to go through first. Now, something you'll notice about candy packaging and just food packaging as a whole is they almost always have the food on the front so that you know what you're getting into. I respect the decision, but this isn't the most aesthetic way to do it, I don't think. Instead, I've got a better idea. As you surely know, these come in packs of 4, with each one breaking off into individual strips. And I think this opens the opportunity for a really cool design if we want to emphasize just one of these Kit Kats. Normally, food packaging tries to make the food look as appetizing as possible, which usually means it's a little unrealistic. So we're just gonna put this front and center, plain and simple. This is what you're gonna get. And that's obviously actual size, which is pretty neat. Anyway, let's just start getting some text in here. I've covered the Mandela effect a few other times on this channel, but this is a really good example where a lot of people remember the Kit Kat logo having a hyphen in between it, but as you can see, it's not there, and I'm not sure if it should be there or not. Maybe I'll decide once we find a good font for this. I think we want to emphasize the blockiness of these bars. Obviously, the original font does do that, but I just want to shake it up a little. I'm kind of thinking we switch to all caps instead of having the lowercase, and I had an idea to make this look super clean. We're gonna have it come up from the top of the bar all the way to the top of the bar, like so. Maybe a hyphen would actually be pretty good. Let's line up this edge real nice. Then to have it stick out a little more, we're gonna get a stroke on it and maybe a little shadow. Ooh, that kind of looks clean. I like having the little space between that K and the A, but it looks a little messy with them being so connected like that. So my solution is we're just gonna make a little divot that cuts in like that. Then plain white is a good color, but I do want to experiment a little bit. I kind of want to take a little inspiration from that beige here. That's pretty good, but oh, I got a better idea. Bevel and contour. Ooh, that's looking clean. I actually really like that. As we were saying before, these companies love to show off the insides of these candies. Obviously, the highlight is that these are crispy wafers, but instead of dissecting this bar we have here, I have a better idea, at least for this design. I need a photo of some wafer, which I think is supposed to be this way, not this way. I could be wrong, but I think that'll look a little nicer anyway. So let's drop this in there and rotate it. You want to perfectly line it up with the grid as much as possible. Just like that. Okay, that doesn't look too bad. I feel like this cutoff just looks kind of weird, so I'm gonna get a different color on both sides of the Kit Kat bar. You know, just nice and simple. Gotta make sure everything is lined up nicely. Ooh, before I forget, we gotta make sure the text on the chocolate matches the text on the bar. Let me shrink this down. Let's see if we can get rid of this pretty easily, hopefully. Nice. And we gotta mess with it a little bit. Okay, getting somewhere. I did make the text a little wider. It's not super noticeable, but it just stands out a little more on the actual chocolate. Then finally, the main event, we gotta add a cat, of course, in this negative space right here. I did have a couple different ideas for this. One is that we have the cat behind the bar like this. Its mouth would be around it, biting into this bar. I don't know how that looks though. Apparently the original concept for Kit Kats was a bar that you could take to work. The main appeal being that it was so thin that you could fit it easily with all your like binders and paper and stuff, I guess. This is gonna be funny. Get a little nose in there. Ooh, maybe we just take something like this. This might work out a little better than mine. Okay, I think that's pretty good. I'll definitely mess with this a little more later. Here's the final version. Cool, let's do Oreo. Oreos have had this packaging for a very long time at this point, and while it obviously does the job, I'm kind of just tired of it. I don't love the fonts, the color could be nicer, and you can't even really see the cookie very well. Like, I understand that everybody knows what an Oreo is at this point, but it's still kind of strange to me that they decided to cover it up with the text. So I essentially want to take this packaging and change everything. So let's drop in our mock-up here, just blocking out what's gonna be in what areas. Okay, I think that's a good enough start. Let's actually start getting stuff into here, starting with the most important part, the cookie itself. Now, I want that very specific angle, which might be a little hard to get because we need the rotation of the word to be correct too. See, like this is almost what we want, but it's just not quite tilted enough. It's not showing the white in the middle, which is clearly a pretty crucial part of their whole brand. And I'm really hoping that we can find one. Ooh, this is like almost perfect. But again, the rotation of the word is off. If this is going on the packaging, it's gotta be straight on, you know? Oh, I wonder if we could make this work somehow though. If we just selected that out. Oh, that really is so close to perfect. Ooh, I might have some trickery I can do though. I'm gonna squish it this way just to fit our shape a little nicer. It's essentially the same size as in the original package, but just being able to see the middle of it is a really big difference. And I'm actually fine with it cutting off at the bottom a little bit, just so it's like the bottom of this circle rather than this circle that's at the bottom of the package. And I'm actually gonna clean up this mask a little bit, just by smoothing out the edges and bringing them inwards so that we don't get that blue on the edge. Then let's get our milk background in there, which I know exists from our cereal box video when we did Captain Crunch. Just like this is perfect. Let's take out that background and put it behind the cookie, of course, and put that somewhere around here. I feel like one of the main goals I'm going for is to make this more fun and just catered towards kids. Maybe not catered towards kids, but just more friendly in general. Anyway, let's just start with a nice blue, and we'll make it so that each flavor has its own distinct color on the side there. Because when a brand has so many kinds of the same product, which Oreo definitely has a lot of, it'd be nice to have different key colors so that you could know which one was which just at a glance. Okay, let's address the fonts. I feel like lowercase might be a little more friendly. Like this all caps is fine. It's just like very in your face, you know? Yeah, that looks a little more kind. Make that text nice and big. Just a little bend could go a long way. And let's get some effects on there. Yeah, I think the outline should just be a dark blue rather than a black or something like that. Bevel and emboss will be very nice. Don't want it to be too noticeable, but just a little something to make it pop out. I feel like all the letters in Oreo have the potential to be really round like an Oreo. Like I'm almost trying to make it look like the inside of an Oreo, just the nice creamy, like yummy. Maybe we do a very subtle gradient, just a little something to give it even more depth. Now I actually want to do a different method with the stroke. I know I said I didn't want to do black, but like look at that. That totally looks like it's just an opened up Oreo, but spelling out different letters. Okay, we're getting somewhere. We want to be sure to fill in these little holes. Okay, that fits really nicely. I'm gonna scoot it over a little bit. Anyway, let's move on to the subtext, Milk's favorite cookie. Let's get some similar effects on there, like a smaller drop shadow. This one can be also warped. Oh, we need the little Nabisco sticker stamp, meaning we actually need to have the Oreo text a little lower. Maybe the Oreo text actually does go over the Oreo just a little bit, just so it can be nice and big without going over this shiny part here. So we go Oreo, big, right there. Yeah, okay, that fits perfect. Let me just mess with that shadow a little more, and we'll give that just the slightest bit of a emboss as well. I actually might want to move the cookie over just a little bit. And in this empty space of our extra blue color here, I'm just gonna put a little text clarifying what flavor this is. Of course, just being original, fitting the curve of the cookie itself. Now let's just add a little bit of the subtext, you know, stuff like chocolate sandwich cookies, and we'll space it out like it does in the original, just like that. Ooh, then right in the middle space right here, maybe we use this color again, and we do that 100%. What does that say? 100% cocoa. I gotta look it up. Sustainably sourced cocoa. There we go. But anyway, here is the final result. Overall, I think it's pretty solid. I think it might be better than the original. Yeah, I don't really have anything to say here. Here's a couple app designs. We've got Duolingo. Now there's a lot of memes going around about Duolingo, about how if you don't do your Spanish lesson or something, then he's gonna come get you. And while they've fully embraced that and tried to like play into the meme and be fun about it, it actually used to be way worse. So the one we're used to now is kind of a pretty cute looking little owl guy. The one before that looked like this, which is essentially the same thing, just a little more awkward. Like they hadn't really solidified their style yet. Then we go back one more generation to this. Like, are you kidding? Like, this one actually warrants the scary factor that a lot of people are playing into. It's obviously not realistic, but it's got like texture to it. I don't know, the face is so bad. Anyway, they escaped the uncanny valley by going even more simple. But what if we try escaping the uncanny valley by going the opposite direction and just making it way realistic? And I'm kind of curious to see if that'll help or make it even more scary, but it's worth going for. Let's see. I want to generally actually keep the same shape. Like, I do like this layout where it's just like a really zoomed in piece of his face. So let's just overlay some feathers onto here. Like, ooh, yeah, like this. Maybe we can kind of just play around and select along the edges that we want to. Okay, that's a decent start. Again, let's just warp it to fit our shape a little nicer, which actually is working pretty well. Let's just keep going with even more of those feathers. This time coming down at a different angle, and we'll just do something like that. And again, get some more warping to fit the shape. I'm gonna try to kind of rotate this edge so that it lines up with the other feathers a little nicer. One more pile of feathers, at least for these ones, going basically the opposite direction as the others. I want this to maybe even be smaller feathers, and let's just select even more. I know that's kind of a pretty rough cutout. These are very organic shapes, so I think it'll work out doing this sort of rotation. That way on this side, the feathers can go straight down almost. This is a little trickier than I thought it would be. That's the general theme that happens with these videos. I think a big part of this is obviously the big ol' eyeball. So let's try to find an owl eye, since Duolingo is an owl duo, which they chose an owl because it's supposed to represent wisdom, being a language learning app. And you might think he's green just because it's a little more poppy than like brown or white or something. But apparently when the company was coming up with a design, one of the co-founders said, you can do anything you want, but I hate the color green. So the design team decided to literally do the one thing that they were tasked not to do. And if you ask me, that's kind of awesome. Just gonna carefully select around this eyeball real quick. There we go. Oh, that's gonna look so messed up. Oh. That makes me feel all kinds of uncomfortable. Okay, let's try to line this up first before we actually fit it in with the feathers. Do I want to stretch it out so it's long? Oh, that looks so disturbing. Ew, ew. Oh, that's so bad. How about this baby? Maybe we do the baby. Oh, that's so dumb looking. Now you might be wondering why I don't just like do this and recolor it and call it good, but I'm not that lazy. Not right now, at least. Might change my mind later. That's a little better. It at least fits like the color scheme better, where it's like black and white rather than like black and orange. It's looking like I gotta cut into these feathers a little bit. Kind of like that is decent. This is a scary looking bird. I'm a little worried for our results. Ooh, I kind of like this one. That's got nice like layers to it. Now, I'm not gonna just directly flip it right at the same spot, because that way you can kind of see the duplicates on the opposite side. So I'm gonna actually overlay it just a little bit like this, and maybe make one of the sides bigger, you know, just trying to make it look a little more uneven. I want this feather to go above the other one. And the brush I'm using is actually very feathered out. Feather. That's so dumb. Anyway, this should be a lot easier to switch the color on. We'll just shift it over to a nice green. Yeah, that actually looks really solid. Jeez. We should probably do an owl beak, right? That would make the most sense. But that also looks kind of lame, relatively. Like it's so thin from the front view. Maybe we'll do a thicker beak. Yeah, that's pretty good. I like the width, you know? Drop that in here. Whoa, that is very bright. Okay. Starting just something like that. Whoa, that looks so crazy. What happened? Let's just feather out these edges. Now let's try to find some bottom feathers. We want them to be similar to these blue ones we found. Something like that might do. Try to rotate it so it's kind of centered around the correct spot. And let's put that at the back. Now we can select out the specific feathers again that we don't need. Let's apply a similar hue saturation sort of thing. Trying to match the colors of the other ones as much as possible. Let's just get an overall brightness contrast on it. Make it darker just a little bit. Then I'm also gonna just apply some shading so that like certain parts of it are more affected by the darkness. Let's flip that, put it on the other side. Let's duplicate the eye. Or maybe I want to just use the other eye that was actually on him. I think that might look a little nicer since the angle will be a little more accurate to real life, obviously. Wow, this looks so crazy. Like that's not natural. I think we might already know the answer to the question we had earlier of if this would be more scary or less scary. It's pretty terrifying. Let me get like a nice shadow under the beak. Maybe even some shading under these feathers and even on top. Wow, this makes me feel Whoa. You know, that is like really strange, and it's very far from perfect right now, but I am kind of just feeling weird looking at it, so I think I'm gonna wrap it up there. All right, there you go. Complicated Duolingo, that's it. Now, I actually lied to you guys earlier. These are not the only 3 iterations of Duo. There's actually an even older version, which looked something like this. And honestly, I'd put this at second best behind this one. It's got nice simple line art with the hidden Duo spelled out right here. It's not super cohesive because all the lines are different thicknesses, along with either having sharp angles like this or rounded edges. But I think we can kind of take inspiration from this and make our own, essentially just having that green background, and then we'll add cleaner versions of these lines on top. So we'll start with our eyeballs here, and this will be the beak. Let's just edit our shape here. Now, I'm not too stressed about copying the like DUO shapes. I think we just make it look aesthetic, and that's the main goal. Now, there's probably an easier way to do this, but I have yet to learn it. So we're going the long way, and we'll get the main big line going up and over. That makes him look angry. Maybe that'll help. That's what they're going for, right? He's angry that you didn't do your lesson. Anyway, that's looking pretty fun. Let me shrink it down to fit a little nicer. Yeah, there you go. While it's more complicated in terms of shapes, it's way more simple in terms of color. And that counts for me, at least. Now, I don't know if either of these are better, but they're definitely what we were going for. Nice and simple and complicated. Like, if they alternated between these, you would still be able to tell what they all are because they're all so similar, while also being so different. Anyway, moving on, we got the final app, Firefox. Now, this logo has actually had a decent amount of drama surrounding it. Here's a little chart of the evolution of the Firefox logo. As you can see, it kind of just continually gets more and more simplified, and most people were okay with that, even up through 2018. And then 2019 rolls around and they change it to this. Anyway, people were just getting way too heated about it, like everyone does about everything on the internet. But to help calm them down, I'm obviously here to remake it, and everyone's gonna love it. We're going the complete opposite direction, full-on realism. So I think we just start with an earth and space. Now, you might think I should just start grabbing fox photos like this and working with that, which would be the move, but believe it or not, Firefox is not a fox. Firefox is the nickname for a red panda. So we're not talking about this guy. We're talking about these. I love them. I don't think it's a hot take to say that these are way cuter. Hello, Jack Black. So let's try to stitch together a bunch of photos of these guys. Okay, this side view one's pretty nice. I'm gonna generally try to keep the same shape as the original. And we can give this a nice warp to fit the curve a little nicer. Now, a very notable part of the original logo is that it has no legs whatsoever, just the little arms hugging the planet. So that'll be a decision we have to make. I don't know what decision I'm gonna make, but it's one we will have to do. I think we exaggerate the tail even more, going even farther up. Yeah, okay, let's get an isolated paw. Oh, that's so cute. Lesser panda? Is that what it's called? Lesser panda. Are you kidding? They're not lesser, they're just small. Oh, it looks so cute. You know, I'm gonna download him just for encouragement in the corner. Yeah, you get to be right here. A paw. I'm on a mission right now. Let's stay focused. Maybe that's good. You know, we'll work with it. Right around here. Okay, then we're gonna have to do some trickiness. We can take out the paws. And I guess we take out the legs. I don't know. It might be kind of weird, but okay, then let's get a replacement head as well, because that is not cutting it right now. The saturation is definitely off, so we'll have to compensate for it. Oh, that's so funny. Look at him go. Wouldn't be Firefox without some fire. Let's light that tail on fire. Oh man, he's gonna be so sick. You know, just going along with the flow. That's so sick. The earth definitely needs a shadow, just like right where the Firefox red panda is at. Then to actually really sell the effect, I'm gonna make the fire glowing onto the guy. Get a new layer on top of everything. We're gonna select a nice like yellowish orange, and hypothetically with a nice blend mode, yep, we can draw on some areas where the fire should be affecting even more. So with that, let's just make it a little darker, but we can make certain areas not affected, mainly the ones that would be touched by fire. I'm just gonna scoot the whole thing up slightly. There you go. Sickest app icon of all time. Anyway, let's move on to the simple one, last one for today. And since we're basing our design off of a red panda, I think we should take some inspiration from their faces. Let's start with our pen tool. We can just pretend that this is perfectly symmetrical and there's nothing wrong with it. We're of course gonna make the color white. Okay, then maybe we just get some circles for eyeballs, and the final piece just being the cheek one. Ooh, then actually I do want to get the nose back in here. The pieces aren't fitting together super well, so I'm just gonna space them out differently. Honestly, I don't love it, but it's not the worst either. Maybe it would be better if we just put this guy on there. Yeah, there you go. Simple version 1, simple version 2. It's up to you, your choice. Honestly, this is my favorite one, I gotta say. Simple, complicated, there you go. All right, that's all the designs for today. Let's wrap things up. If you guys like this vibe of video, please let me know. I was thinking this could be a sick tradition, either for April Fool's Day or like the end of the year or something. I would just take the best designs I made since last time or whatever's globe-worthy, compile them together like this, and then maybe I'd talk a little more about the specific process behind them or specific stories or whatever. I don't know. If there's anything you guys want me to talk about, I will. I want to keep this a chill environment where we can keep it real, you know? And I could even do separate videos that aren't part of the compilations, that are just this more chill vibe. Or maybe you hated this and it sucks. That's fine too. Happy April Fools. And with that, it's time to subscribe.